love you. I feel good, you look great. I like you, I can't wait. A first time, a first date. You're so fine, I'm so glad.
Okay, so welcome back to the channel, and we want to part 2 of a quick look through the consultation on the new taxi laws that are proposed for Wales. If you are getting into ride share in Wales, or private hire driving or taxi driving in Wales, highly recommend that you read this out. The link's in the comments in the description below. Click on it, have a look, read through. You've got until the end of this month, end of May, to make your representations and put in your comments for consideration. And I highly recommend that you actually do read it and do make your comments. So last video we finished on question 11, which was fixed penalty notices. So it's question 12, which is about national penalty point scheme. So this will cover all of Wales, and local authorities will be able to issue points onto your private hire or taxi licence to cover some minor infringements, stuff which is not worth fining you over. So stuff like that would be not having a fire extinguisher in your car, not carrying a first aid kit, cancellation of a pre-booked fare without reasonable excuse. And that, I think, is really tackling the multi-apping, which will come on next question, which covers multi-apping. So if you cancel a fare and you don't have a good excuse and the customer complains to a local authority, you can have points put on your licence. And if you do it too many times, you'll then get suspended or have your taxi licence revoked. There's a couple of issues with this. It means, is the contract between the customer and the driver, or is the contract between the customer and the private hire operator? And if it's between the customer and the private hire operator, should the driver be carrying any penalties associated with that? So that's something that needs to be considered. Obviously, if a driver does take on a contract, then they really should be covering that. But that's actually covered a little bit further down as well, not just with multi-apping, but also cancellation of fares. So this one is for minor infringements, like cancellation of bookings, not carrying a first aid kit, and you'll get points, and once you tot up, you'll be suspended. I don't have an issue with that. That seems fair enough. It doesn't cover more serious issues like refusing assistance dogs. That's dealt with hearings, inappropriate behaviour and overcharging. That's all going to be continued to be dealt with a hearing of the local authority. I think if we're going to go down these national routes out, far better to have a national licence, not a local authority licence. So that's question 12. Do you think national penalty point scheme should be introduced for minor infringements? No harm in that. Now, question 13 is one for the rideshare industry and those who do multi-apping. Question 13 is, do you think that there is a need to address the negative consequences of multi-apping? If yes, which option, including the suggestions of your own, do you think will be most effective? So multi-apping is when you run multiple apps, like you might have a veezu, Bolt and Uber, which are the three main ones in Wales, and you operate three at the same time, and when you get one booking on one app, you're supposed to switch off the other apps. But some drivers don't, they keep the other apps going, and if a better paying job comes through, they'll cancel the one that they accepted and do the better paying one. That results in customers not getting the cars that they ordered, or delays in getting the cars. And customer complaints about cancelled bookings through this system is now commonplace with councils. And I'm a bit concerned about not just inconvenience, but passenger safety. If it's a young girl that's left at night on her own, not able to get home because the driver's cancelled and gone off on another booking. So this is what's being proposed. There's a couple of options at the moment. One is holding operators to account for cancelled bookings. Local authorities grant licences to operators in the expectation that they will fulfil the passenger bookings that they accept. We may wish to work with local authorities to take action against operators whose services falls below an agreed level. So that's one option, is to make operators responsible for covering bookings. The second one is limiting drivers' freedom to use more than one app at once. So it's going to pretty much ban multi-apping. For example, by requiring each vehicle to display the name of one company the driver will be accepting bookings through. Leeds City Council already do this. They have a requirement that vehicle conditions requirement that the operator's name be written onto the vehicle. So that's it. Either the options that are being held up is for operators to be held responsible for cancelled bookings, and then they have to deal with the driver. And the second one is to limit the driver's ability to multi-app, and that effectively means banning multi-apping. I think it should just be down to the operator. Bolt, for instance, if you have a high cancellation rate, will suspend you or even take you off the platform. Operators can do this, the apps can do this, and that's the way really it should be done. Because those who are drivers who are responsible and do multi-apping responsibly can earn a good living, and they should be penalised because of one or two drivers who take advantage of the multi-apping. So it should then be operators. Another thing is, and this is coming back to the Uber v Sefton case, which I'll do a video on, as to who is the principal contract between. Is it between the driver, is it between the customer and the operator who takes the booking, or is it between the customer and the driver who accept the booking? For all intents and purposes, it really should be between the customer and the operator, because the operator is the one who advertises and takes bookings. That, of course, means that operators become liable for VAT. And I think that needs to be sort of much more clearly laid out in this. Is it going to be much more like Uber or a more traditional private hire company? Now, private hire companies don't charge VAT on fares because it's always been assumed that the contract is between the customer and the driver, and the operator is just acting as an agent. And as most drivers aren't earning £86,000 a year, they don't have to register for VAT, so no VAT gets added. Whereas operators, their combined fares of all the bookings that take will exceed 86,000, and they will have to pay VAT and register for VAT. Now in London they do. Private hire operators are forced by the Transport for London to register for VAT and charge VAT. Outside of London they're not, because they're covered by local government Miscellaneous Act, and is slightly different, and it's viewed that it's a contract between driver and customer and rider, and so no VAT. But it really does need to go down to the stage where the contract needs to be cleared out as being between operator and rider, and VAT is chargeable, and operators are legally responsible for meeting booking requirements. So that's what I think. I think number one, holding operators to account for cancelled bookings is a way forward, because the contract has to be between rider and operator. So that's question 13. Right, question 14 is another one for rideshare and private hire. Is about cross-border hiring. So the new legislation proposes two options. So the question is, do you agree that option A is the best means to address concerns about cross-border hire between Wales and England? Please provide comments, including practical considerations or other options you believe to be better. So option A, which is the preferred method, is to introduce a legislative requirement that pre-HV operators, drivers and vehicles who undertake bookings wholly or mainly in Wales must be licensed in Wales, and therefore meet the Welsh national minimum standards. But it's only going to be wholly or mainly. So sort of border regions like Herefordshire and Monmouthshire, an operator can be based in Herefordshire and as long as they are mainly doing work in Herefordshire, then they can also do work in Monmouthshire. And they can pick up and drop off in Monmouthshire, as long as most of the work is in Herefordshire. Now, this is actually quite important, not just regarding passengers, but things like school contracts. A lot of big operators, private hire operators, can be in one area and do school contracts for a local authority in another area. So this would probably allow that to continue to happen, provided the bulk of those contracts are in the area in which the operator is licensed. So if it's an English company, they can do border work without a problem. Now, option B is that say that any job or any journey that ends or starts in Wales must be undertaken by a licensed authority in Wales. So an English company couldn't do a job from, say, Hereford to Brecon, because it's finishing in Brecon in Wales, and only a Welsh licensed authority car and driver could do that job. Now that would be extremely hard to enforce. I mean, what you're going to have checks at the border? It's not going to happen. So option B isn't really a possibility, really. Option A is really the only option. Now, of course, within Wales itself, cross-border hiring, where one local authority might have different standards to another local authority, that could all be dealt with by having a national licence and a national vehicle licence, and there is then no cross-border problems except along the English-Welsh borders, and that can easily be dealt with by option A. So that's my view on that. A national licence would eradicate a lot of the problems of cross-border hire. Well, we're now on to question 15, and this is about the NR3 register. Do you agree that the use of the NR3 register in the driver licensing process should be mandatory in Wales? Now, at the moment, in England, this is mandatory. There's a national register of drivers that go onto that register, and if their licence is revoked in one local authority, if they apply to another local authority, that local authority has to check the register, and they'll find out that the driver or proposed driver has been banned in one or more other authorities, and then they can take that into consideration. Now, that's mandatory in England. It's not mandatory yet in Wales, although most do that. But this will just really place that into a mandatory situation, and that's not a problem. I mean, if you can't operate correctly in one area, you're not going to operate correctly in another area, and you don't deserve to have a license, so that's not a problem. It's a straightforward safety. So that's question 15. So question 16 is about the vehicles and moving towards cleaner air and zero emission vehicles. And question 16 is, do you think that Welsh Minster should take action to accelerate the transition to zero emission vehicles and taxis? If yes, which of the following options would you prefer? Please provide comments. A. Set a deadline for all taxis and PHVs to be zero emission at the tailpipe. B. Set an age limit for vehicles which are not zero emission vehicles. Or C. Do something else. Right, now my problem with zero emission vehicles at the moment is that not everybody lives in a house with an off-road parking with an off-road charger. And you do need an off-road charger if you have an AV. I would love to have an MG5. That's my preferred car for when I start doing private eye driving or rideshare driving. MG5's a nice estate, electric, very nice car, very economical. The problem is that I don't have anywhere to charge it overnight. There is no street side low charge chargers. To keep batteries conditioned on an EV, you do need to trickle charge a car at least once a week. That then gives the battery management system a chance to equalise the charge across the different cells in the battery. If you do purely fast charging, it degrades the battery about 10% quicker than if you condition the battery. So you are going to make your battery break down your battery very, very quickly, especially as a taxi where you're doing a lot of miles and doing a lot of charges. If you don't condition your battery, one, you degrade the battery quickly. Two, it increases the fire risk. It's as simple as that. Plus, the other problem is that at the moment, fast chargers are charging about 85p per kilowatt hour, and that makes it more expensive than petrol. So, from a purely cost point of view, the cars are more expensive, the fuel is more expensive unless you can plug in overnight at home. You degrade your battery quicker because there's no public low volt chargers to allow conditioning. Just not practical. Not at the moment. The infrastructure isn't there. If the infrastructure was there, if I had on-street slow charge trickle chargers that could plug in overnight, I'd go with an EV. But there isn't any, and I'm not willing to blow a hole in a big wad of money just for that, because the car's going to degrade so quickly. So for me, EVs aren't the way. I'll go for a hybrid. It's not going to be zero emission, but that's just the way it is. If they want to bring on taxis and PHVs to be zero emission, they need to put in place the infrastructure before they start forcing that. But that's it. Question 16, no. No age limit, no deadline. Just put in some more chargers and people will move over naturally. Right, Class B vehicles is the next question, question 17. Do you agree with our proposals for Class B vehicles? So this is really for novelty vehicles, classic and specialty cars, limousines, horse carriages, stuff which isn't a standard car. And they're going to introduce a Class B licence to undertake taxi or PHV activities. They won't need to meet all the requirements of a full taxi, such as passenger headroom or seating width or luggage capability, and stuff like that. I would actually like the local authorities to have, okay, if it's national, it doesn't matter, but I would like to have more flexibility on licensing of vehicles. And I say this for one reason, is when I used to do, last time I used to do a lot of taxing, it was in the Wye Valley. There was a lot of canoeists, and I used to do a lot of work transferring holiday makers and canoeists up and down the Wye Valley by putting a canoe on the top of the roof of the car and taking them back to where it started off up in Hay, just past Hay, the canoe down to Monmouth and beyond. And it was quite a good pay, and I used to do a lot of it. What I would like to do is, at some stage, is get my own licence, and now I want to get a 16-seater minibus, rip out the back seats, so it takes it down to 6-seater or 8-seater, and then put in a row of cycle racks, so I can do cycle trips out and bring people from the local cycle tracks at Cum Forest, for instance. But the council won't license that because it would be a modification. By taking out the back seats, I've modified the vehicle, and the council won't therefore license it. So I think there needs to be a bit more flexibility, especially in Wales, which is a tourist-based industry, to allow people to adapt vehicles to meet more leisure-related travel activities, such as cycling, such as fishing, such as golf. You pick up 4 people with a load of golfing stuff, you're going to need a van in the back, a big space in the back, and a 16-seater minibus that's had its back seats ripped out and replaced with luggage racks or cycle racks would be a really good option, especially if you go down the line of taxi buses in rural areas. But that's it. Question 7, would really like to see Class B vehicles and a much more open and flexible approach for licensing of non-standard vehicles. Right, questions 18 and 19 relate to the regulatory impact assessment, which runs alongside the consultation paper. I've not read that, but it just asks you, do you have anything else to be provided? Question 20 and 21 is all about the Welsh language. Would it be positive or negative on the Welsh language? And then question 22, any other issues? Any other issues you would like to raise about taxi PH3 licensing? And again, I highlighted in this area about the need for a national private hire licence scheme, taking it out of the hands of local authorities, putting it in the hands of Transport for Wales, and speeding up the process, because it's just way too long. It's not attracting young people into the trade anymore. I'll have to sort out the paper, but I read somewhere that the average age of taxi drivers and private hire drivers is about 6 years older than the average age of the general workforce. Taxi drivers are an ageing workforce, getting older. Young people aren't being attracted to it. If you was 20, 22 years old on universal credit, you went to your job advisor and said, oh, I'm going to become a taxi driver in Newport. It's going to take me 11 months to get my licence. Can I sign on for 11 months? They're going to say no, and they're going to get you working in a warehouse. I can wait 11 months because I've got other income coming in. But if you're unemployed, Job Centre won't allow you to sit around for 10 or 11 months waiting for a licence. So it's going to get older and older. Now, that's not just a problem for normal paying customers, it's also a problem for school contracts. Lots of children are taken to school in a taxi. A lot of school taxi drivers just do it part-time, just for a little bit of extra money. Maybe they're retired and don't need to work, so they just do a little bit of school contract work. If you start putting too much on them, such as the training requirements in this, they're just going to say, I'm not going to do it. It's just not worth it, and I'll go and find something else to do. And you're going to lose a lot of school contract drivers. They already had problems finding school contract drivers, and it's just going to get worse. Same with Friday and Saturday nights. A lot of those drivers, they work seasonally during the winter. They may just work Friday, Saturday night part-time. If you put too much requirements on them for learning Welsh, for going through all the training, if it takes too long to do, 11, 12 months to do, they're going to say, I'm going to find something better. I'm not going to go to work part-time and go through all that aggravation. So while it might look good to professionalise the trade, it could have negative impacts because it won't be attractive anymore. So that's it, my response to the proposed taxi bill. I'd like to hear your comments if you've gone through it. Leave them below in the comments. And until next time, I am going to be doing one shortly on the changes proposed in England. The Department of Transport Means and Measures, I think it is, committee has proposed quite a lot of changes to the regulations, and the government has accepted a lot of those changes, and it's going to deal specifically with the Wolverhampton issue. But that's for another video. This one's about the changes in Welsh taxi regulations. So until next time, have fun and get out there and enjoy your life.